Good evening and welcome along to the TGP1 race here in Australia and Singapore. We have got two fantastic races coming up for you tonight, set in the southern hemisphere. We've crossed the equator and we are down for two classic races, I'm sure, that will be coming up to us in the next hour and a half or so. We've already had a lot of drama in this qualifying session. Two of our title rivals, Matt and Corey, finding the wall early on in qualifying. Disaster for them, both crashing out in two different parts of the circuit, and they will be starting from the back of the grid in a race which could be huge for the championship. With the remaining races we've got coming up and Softy's lead as it is already, this is disastrous start to the evening already for two of our championship contenders. We've lost three cars in total already in this qualifying session. Alistair also finding the barriers, unfortunately for him. But aside from that, the drivers, we've got just over 6 minutes left to go. We've got the drivers just finishing their second runs at the moment, and they will be looking to start their final runs shortly. We've got a few drivers, most of them actually on in-laps. Let me have a quick look down the order just to see if we have anyone on a flyer at the moment, and I think, unfortunately, we're going to be disappointed. Let's focus on Jordan then, see how he's getting on in the middle sector as he's finding time on himself at the moment. 2 seconds at the moment down on our provisional pole sitter, Softy, who's having a hell of a session at the moment. Up top, 3 tenths clear of Dan, is nearest challenger. A 1 minute 19.1 is Softy's time at the moment. Jordan, a half a second then up on his personal best. Is he going to find time in the final sector? Coming around the final corner now. Very difficult corner. The back end trying to get away from you the whole time round. And then the long run to the line. Is this going to be an improvement for Jordan? Yes, it is. He pushes himself into 9th and into the top 10, finding 7 tenths of a second in the end to push Ginger Andy down out of the top 10 places. We got Phil Bardwell a little bit further back, just starting a lap at the moment. Getting away with taking the curb there, Phil, doing a good job. The Ferrari driver up in P4 at the moment, got half a second to find on our provisional pole sitter Softy, and he's got 2 tenths to find on his teammate Dan. The two of them barely separated at all this season. Phil, the one making more of the mistakes, and Dan picking up more of the opportunities. So a little bit of a ropey season so far, you have to say, from Phil, but he's finding a 10th at the moment in the first split. So I'm sure for him, he'll be hoping that he can have a good remainder of the lap then as we ride on board with the Ferrari driver into this tricky chicane now. Try and catch as much of the sausage curb on the right-hand side as you can, but don't upset the car, which he managed to do. Coming towards the end of the second split then. Phil Bardwell purple in the middle sector, a 10th up on his personal best, and flying at the moment, and now he's flying into the wall, and he's lost his front right wheel, and Phil Bardwell is going no further in this qualifying session. Disaster for the Ferrari driver. He's going to be no better than 4th, and what could have been a very good lap has ended up very disappointing indeed for Phil Bardwell. It's good to see that he's continuing his dirt rally form in TGP1, but he certainly won't be very happy with that at all. We now cut to the Ferrari-powered car of the Alfa Romeo of ART Kyle, who is back with us this week, and he is hoping to set a good lap time. Is he? No, he's coming into the pits. ALT Carl coming into the pits there. We have got Softy, meanwhile, who is on a quick lap, unseen by me, starting a fast lap there. So what can he do? Is he going to improve on his 1 minute 19.1 and distance himself even further from the rest of the field? Up to the line then Softy comes, and he does a 1 minute 18.8. Wow. 3 tenths extra in hand over everyone else, and just sets that bar a little bit higher for the next person to jump over. We got most of the cars in the pits at the moment. Aidan Griffin's, meanwhile, coming to the line. Is this going to be improvement for him? Yes, it is. Up to P4. Both racing points at the moment then on the second row. Ginger Andy, who's always gone well round here, coming then to the chicane. Takes too much curb, runs a little bit wide. He'll be kicking himself for that one, and he's backed out of the lap. Probably quite rightly, you have to say, losing a bit too much time there. Maybe he would turn the engine down, go for another run. He hasn't got time to pit. So he's going to want to be careful on these tyres to make sure he doesn't take too much life out of them to give him another opportunity. gets a bit of charge back in the battery perhaps and go for it one more time. We've got the drivers starting to funnel out and go for another run. Softy obviously on an in lap. Jack Hickey on an out lap. We've got the cars leaving the pits at the moment. We'll see a flurry of activity then for what hopefully will be a very exciting last couple of minutes of qualifying, which of course won't include Phil Bardwell, Matt Tibos, Alistair and Corey, having all crashed out at various points of this session. So we've got Ginger Andy then, but it's right on board with the McLaren driver then for a lap around Albert Park. It's very tricky, braking zone of turn 3. You've got to keep the nose interested, which he does. Try and keep the rear end in check round this long left-hander, and unfortunately, he's run a little bit wide, and that's ruined my lap of onboard commentary with Ginger Andy. So thank you, Andy, for all your efforts there for all of one corner. That's very thoughtful of you. Meanwhile, we have got Paul McGuinness, a fellow Scotsman, in the Red Bull, who we're now riding on board with. There seems to be a little bit of a curse at the moment because Paul McGuinness very wide there into turn number 3. Owen Quimby's going no further in this session. Retired on the exit of turn number 2. So Owen hitting the wall there, and his fate ending as Paul McGuinness has invalidated his lap. Right, who's next? I feel like the Grim Reaper going from driver to driver, cursing them as they are trying to get a quick lap in. Court has just come and started his flying lap now. And he's invalidated. Jordan is next. Let's see how the Williams driver can get on. Down into turn number 3 then. Keeps it relatively tidy. Runs a little bit wide, perhaps. He's got to keep it within the lines here, which he does. Jordan funneling his way through Sector 1. The Williams driver slightly down on his personal best, but still good enough at the moment for a top 10. Still 2 sectors to go, with a lot of time to make up, I'm sure he'd think. Into the next chicane then. Launching himself onto the back straight. What sort of second split time is this going to be from the Williams driver? He's 9,000ths of a second up on his previous best lap time. Onto the back straight then. DRS wide open. Draining the battery as much as he can. Another 90-degree right-hander then. Keeps it off the curb on the outside. Flick it into this corner here. Hope the rear end sticks, and it does. Just 2 corners to go then for Jordan. Jack Hickey has gone into second place, unseen by me. Well done, Jack. His brother doing bits at the moment in TGP2. We're going to follow Jordan to the line then, and he stays P9. How's Dan the Man getting on? He's not finding time in the middle sector, and he's actually finding the wall in the 3rd sector, and that is his qualifying over. We've got Johners coming to the line at the moment. Kyle's gone P6. Johners, who was provisional pole sitter at one point in this session, puts himself in P5. CJH has invalidated his lap time, and that brings your qualifying even to a conclusion then, with drama happening all over the grid. But in the end, it was a similar result out front for the man Softy, who, interestingly enough, has not won either of these races that we're going to tonight before in TGP1. So he'll be wanting to break his curse, break his duck. And he started off in the best way possible then. Softy takes yet another pole position for the AlphaTauri team. Jack Hickey joins him on the front row. A good qualifying session from him, you have to say. Dan the Man in P3 for the Ferrari, bottling his last lap. He'll be disappointed with that. Aidan Griffins joins him on the second row with John as a good qualifying lap at the end there to push him up to P5. Phil Bardwell, we saw crash into the wall. Not really a surprise with ART Carl in P7. CJH in P8. I think he'll be a little bit disappointed with that, perhaps. Liam Robbo in P9 and Ginger Andy rounding out the top 10. And the drivers starting on fresh tyres will be Jordan Paul, Owen Court, Matt Tibos, Corey, and Alistair. So as the drivers get ready for the race start, we can have a little look at it. It's a dry race. And we don't expect any rain. Softy in a very good position to pick up his 9th race win of the season. And he'll be very much hoping for a clean run down to turn 1. We've got quite a long run down to turn 1, with, in race trim anyway, a relatively heavy braking zone. And it's an area of the track which does attract collision. The cars funnel their way through that corner, and Softy will be hoping to keep it clean and ensure that he cannot come under any pressure from any of the drivers behind. Softy, with his 59th pole in TGP1, still away off of Dan with the record of 81 poles. But that will be little consolation to him at the moment, because the drivers are getting ready. We're ready. Are you? The 5 lights are out and we're underway in Melbourne, and it's a good start from both the racing points. Dan the man a little bit bogged down on the run down to turn 1, but the second phase of the start for him was very good as he tries to swoop his way around the outside of Aiden. Aiden holding on for dear life as we got some movers and fallers further back in the grid. Dan the man being swamped again then by the 2 racing points as Aiden does try to go around the outside of Dan the man into turn number 3. It was Jack Hickey, making his move around the outside of Dan into turn number 1. Further down the order then, Corey and Matt not making up much progress, and Jordan losing a couple of places as well. Phil Bardwell not making any impressions at the moment as CJH has got past Liam Robbo further back, as we got a great tussle at the moment for P8 involving 4 cars, 2 of them Scotsmen, and they're going to try and go wheel to wheel as we've got a bit of front wing flying off in front of us here at the moment as the race getting into its phases, as Paul McGuinness has run wide and there's a Hass off as well. It's caught trying to make some moves up. Jordan's had an awful start. He's dropped a couple of places. Matt Tibos is in last at the moment. So absolute disaster for him as the drivers funnel around, and we got a spinner at the back, and it's Causa. Unbelievable. One of the championship contenders finds himself the wrong way round and with front wing missing as we have a yellow flag now, unsurprisingly. It's all happening in the middle of the pack at the moment as we've got CJ Hates darting to the inside of another of the Alfa Romeos there as they funnel the way through, and we have got Kyle pitting with Softy extending his lead out the front. 1.4 seconds, a dream opening lap there for the soft cop, doing just what he needed to do. Is we've got Jordan putting a move on Jinder Andy to get himself into the top 10. Good move there from the Williams driver, but he's going to have to watch out as Andy's getting very racy on the run down to turn 3, and Court's getting involved as well. It's 3 cars for 1 place, and Andy, for the meanwhile, has got that place under wraps. And we also had Owen come into the pits there on lap 1 as well, but we got a great scrap here for 10th place. Further up the order then, we got Dan the man trying to put a little bit of pressure on Jack Hickman. Dan the man tried to get him around the outside into turn number 1, but couldn't quite manage it. Jack Hickman holding on well, you have to say. And in the end, Dan has to set off a P3 at the moment as Softy stretching his lead further out. This is exactly the sort of start that he would have wanted. 2.5 seconds almost in the lead. He's going to break the DRS before it's even in play, as we got a little bit of a field split going on at the moment. We've sort of got the battle for second with these 5 cars in shot at the moment. Then we've got a little bit of a battle for P7, and then it just seems to be everyone else really, as Alistair making his way up the order now, P12, climbing 4 positions on that opening lap as Softy sets another fastest lap as DRS will now come into play, and the Ferraris will fancy their chances. Both of the Ferrari drivers involved in this scrap for second, one way or another, as we were on board. But down there, oh, we did, but Phil Bardwell, if he's kept it out of the wall, that would be a fantastic effort, but he's sent spinning himself around on the exit of turn 2. I'm just trying to have a look at his end plate. Yes, he has got damage, and that will really hurt him around the middle section of this track. He's dropped down to 9th, and he'll have to come into the pits. Phil Bardwell doing his best way to bottle yet another race in this TGP1 season, and proving why Dan the man is clearly the team leader at the moment, as Phil's going to be sent dropping down the order. Disaster from the man from Middlesbrough, and he doesn't really like travelling south, and he's travelled south of the equator and found himself in the wall. Disaster for Phil, and that has almost certainly ruined his race. Meanwhile, the battle for second, the other Ferrari, is flying as Phil picks up a penalty further back. It's going from bad to worse, but for his teammate, he's getting a fantastic opportunity to try and take second place from Jack Hickman. These two have been on the same parts of the road so often this season. Really, I'd say 2 of the standout performers, you have to say, so far from this season. And are we going to see a change for P2? Dan the man's going to try and think about it. Obviously, DRS in order. Battery levels relatively equal. Jack Hickman with the slightly better battery levels, but surely down into turn number 3. Dan, just unfortunately for him, a little bit far back as this quartet heads their way through the first sector. Pit stops will become a thing sooner rather than later. It seems like Phil has stayed out, perhaps trying to extend his run until the pit stops there to ensure that he takes as little payback as possible. So we had Court going a little bit wide there, and Jordan, who made his way up to the top 10 at one point, now finds himself down in 13th and under pressure from Matt Tibos, who still hasn't been able to make up any places. So it's really not going very well for Matt Tibos at the moment. Is on the alternative strategy, starting on those medium tyres. But Matt not making the sort of progress you would expect, you have to say. Meanwhile, back at the front, Dan the man with DRS again, has used quite a bit more than his battery than Jack Hickman at the moment, so it's worth looking out for that. Johnner's putting a little bit of pressure on Aiden now, and Liam Robbo starting to get involved in this battle. This quartet could become a 5-some once again. So, Dan in the tyre tracks. We've got Aiden coming into the pits, the first one of the front runners to blink. Dan still trying all he can to put pressure on the Racing Point in front, but still not quite close enough. Is he going to have to wait until the stops? Who's going to blink first? Interesting to see Aiden pitting when he did. Perhaps he's leaving the door open for his teammate to pit this lap, which would obviously mean Aiden wouldn't then have to pit the lap afterwards on perhaps used tyres. So playing the team game, which Racing Point have done so well so far this season. Obviously picked up a couple of wins in the process as well, and their two drivers doing a great job so far. So thanks to the stops, Matt Tibos has finally made his way up a couple of positions, but only into P12, still stuck behind Jordan. Meanwhile, this battle for second still the closest battle on track that we've got at the moment. Dan the man getting all squirrely, coming through the fast chicane on the DRS again, but just not quite close enough, and it's going to have to be settled in the stops, it seems. Dan just doesn't quite have the pace to do it, and someone who does have the pace at the moment is Liam Robbo. He climbed all the way to the back of Johners and starting to put him under pressure. Are we going to see any of the top 3 pit? Yes, we do. Jack Hickman peels over to the pits, releases down the man, and we also have Johners and Liam Robbo coming to the pit. CJH has pitted as well. Paul McGuinness has stayed out. So it's a battle for the pit stops. Phil Bardwell, interestingly, stayed out too. Good turnaround there for the Racing Point mechanics for Jack Hickman. Where is he going to come out in relation to Aiden, who's coming down the start-finish straight at the moment? Jack Hickey is well clear. What about Johners? Aiden has managed to stay ahead of the Renault driver. So it's as they were then for the battle for second. Aiden, you have to say, has closed in quite a bit on Jack Hickman compared to when they pitted. So the undercut might still work for him in relation to Dan the man, but obviously his tyres will be affected by doing those extra couple of laps, and Dan could have a pace advantage towards the end of the race. But as we know, it's not the easiest track to overtake on in Australia, so it could still work in Racing Point's favour. Meanwhile, out at the front, Softy is having a cruise at the moment. We've got a really good battle going on at the moment for 5th place on the road, at least. Phil Bardwell heading this train. Andy wasn't able to get past Phil in the end. We've caught putting all kinds of pressure on Andy at the moment. But just not quite in a position as Matt Tibos gets very close to the back of Jordan. Are we going to see any of these cars peel in? Yes, most of them. Andy, Court and Jordan all peel in, and staying out is Corey and Matt Tibos. Softy came into the pits as well. According to AWS, the pit window's now open. Dan the man came into the pits as well. Where's he going to come out in relation to Jack Hickman? But more importantly, Aiden. I think they're both going to be clear of him. I think neither of them are going to be clear of him, as Dan the man has pulled off an excellent overcut, and then unfortunately for him, overcut the chicane and ended up wide, but the battle's not over yet. Hickman's having to go defensive on the inside. Dan the man's going to try and go the long way round. Hickman runs him a little bit wide, and that could give Aiden an opportunity, but he's just not quite close enough. And Jack Hickman keeps a net P2 for the moment, but as we said, Dan the Man will have better tyres. Putting a really good in-lap down the man. That was a fantastic effort, as Aiden, unfortunately, has picked up a penalty. That could ruin his chances come the end of the race, because at the moment, at least, a few of the drivers have kept it relatively clean. Matt Tibos has picked up a penalty now, obviously at the moment in P2, but a net P11, P12. It's really not been the race for one of our championship challengers. Down the man then, all over the back of Jack Hickman, and Jack Hickman's teammate likewise just behind, ready to pounce if needs be. This 5, which has become again, thanks to Liam Robbo's good bit of pace, could have been a 6 if we hadn't lost Phil to his stupid incident. So, surely Dan is going to have a good chance into turn number 1. He was on the overtake. He's using the DRS further back. Meanwhile, Jonas could have a really good opportunity at Aiden. No, he doesn't. Dan the Man is trying his best to stop staring at a BWT wing, and at the moment, his best isn't good enough. And he's going to have to do it for at least one more lap, it seems. He's really wrestling with that car, despite being on the fresher tyres. Out of all these guys at the moment, it does seem as if Liam Robbo has the pace of all of them. I think if he's able to clear Johners and have a run at Aiden, he could very easily be in a position to challenge for a podium. That'd be really good for the Haas driver, and we'll see how that develops. I'd hate to put the commentator's curse on him, but he does seem to be having some really good pace at the moment. And my co-commentator Roy has joined us now. Roy, you've come at a fantastic moment. We've got a brilliant squabble for second, involving 5 cars from 3 or 4 different teams.
Good evening, Mike. Yeah, this is looking fantastic so far from what I've seen. Dan the Man pressuring Jack Hickey in the Racing Point, looking to make a move on the Racing Point driver, but of course he did overshoot the chicane when he came out the pits. Perhaps could have kept that position, but yeah, it's an interesting battle for 5th place. Yeah, this is really good at the moment, as we got Phil and Corey coming into the pits. Those obviously starting on the slightly different tyres. Phil staying out as long as he could with that damaged front wing. Meanwhile, a little bit further back, John is getting a little bit leery coming out of the final corner, but doesn't give Liam Robbo an opportunity to overtake into turn 1 at least. Owen Quimby has managed to find the wall in the middle, in the last sector even, but Dan the Man isn't able to find a way past Jack Hickney for the moment, but Liam Robbo has managed to find a way past Jonas around the outside into turn 4. Fantastic move from the Haas driver. He really had some good pace at the moment, Roy. Absolutely incredible move. Everyone had great racing respect for each other there, and Liam Robbo found his way around the outside of Johners. Now he's going to be looking to pressure the Racing Point of Aidan Griffins in P5.
Yeah, Liam Robbo showing some really good pace at the moment. As I said just a moment ago, he could really be in the hunt for second place here. He's got past one of the drivers he needs to get past, but just needs to clear Aiden now. It doesn't necessarily need to, thanks to Aiden's penalty, but perhaps Jack Hickman would like Aiden to play a little bit of a rear gunner option at the moment, as Dan the Man now picks up a penalty, perhaps restricting his options at a net P2 now, Dan.
Yeah, and I think the slight issue now for Liam Robbo is that he did have to use his overtake mode to actually clear Johners in the first place, so now he has to sit back and perhaps save that energy so he can go for another move on the Racing Point of Aiden.
Yeah, as Liam Robbo runs a little bit deep into the final corner there, so perhaps going to restrict his options into turn number 1. Meanwhile, we're back on board with Dan as Matt Tibos has finally come into the pits, the last of our drivers to pit, as Alistair Bay now finds the wall, and we have a virtual safety car, and we've perhaps been robbed of a good move from Dan into Jack Hickman, but now's the time, recharge the batteries, save a little bit of fuel, Roy. And this could give Dan the opportunity he needs to find a way past and into what is second place on the road.
Yeah, this is the time of the race where you turn all your engine modes down, turn your fuel down, save up everything you can so you can go for an attack in the final 5 laps of this race.
Yeah, interestingly, I've just noticed on the time screens actually, Roy, CJH is sort of being brought a little bit into this battle. He's only a couple of seconds back. Obviously, this is with virtual safety car speed, so the gaps are elongated slightly. But certainly don't rule him out of getting involved in this. And obviously, with the penalty situation, unfortunately, he has penalties himself. But on the road, at least, as we get back going again, he could be in a good position to pounce. And someone else who hopes they're in a good position to pounce, Roy, is Dan.
Yeah, Dan all over the back of Jack Hickey now for this second place on the road. Dan, of course, does have that 3-second penalty. There's still plenty of time if he can perhaps build a gap as Liam Robbo goes down the inside of Aidan for P4. Runs him out of road. I don't know how that's going to be viewed later on, but Liam Robbo for now is P4 on the road. Yeah,
he picked up a penalty just before that as well. Aidan with dirty tyres, wearing a little bit wide there as well. So unfortunately for Aidan, losing a lot of time. And John is now best placed to pick up that third place perhaps. Meanwhile, in the battle for second, Dan still doing his utmost to get past Jack. But Jack is running out of Urs actually, Roy. So this could be Dan's best opportunity. But he doesn't know that.
Yeah, he's got DRS wide open now, looking to make a move around the outside. Jack Hickey covers it well and just about manages to stay ahead. It's a very difficult track to overtake, so ERS deployment isn't the hardest thing to save around here. But yeah, the racing point of Jack doing very well to hold on to P2 from Dan. Yeah, Dan obviously not aware of Jack's situation, but he has nearly 70% compared to Jack's 16. So he just needs to put himself in a good enough position. Perhaps he'll try it this lap down the back straight. He's using a little bit of his overtake now, perhaps to get as close as he can, Roy. Yeah, you have to be very brave to make a move into this chicane. I don't think he's going to be close enough to do so. You have to be side by side to attempt that. But he takes a lot of curb through there, does Dan the man, and he's all over the back of the racing point of Jack for P2. Tries to go around the outside. Jack Hickman defends the inside. Can he outbrake him around the outside? Yes, he can. Can he make the corner? Yes, he can. And Dan the man is up into P2, and now he needs to clear a 3-second gap from Jack Hickman if he wants to keep that position too. Absolutely fantastic stuff there from Dan the man. He waited. He was stalking his prey as much as he could, and finally he pounced. He got his claws in, and he's got the move done. From what we can see from our telemetry here, though, struggling a little bit on fuel, perhaps. So that could limit his options of being able to get a little bit of a gap if he can behind. Matt Tibble sets the fastest lap of the race up in P7 now, but with a lot of penalties to his name, that really isn't going to help him. But Jack Hickey just needs to, as you said, Roy, keep that gap within 3 seconds and second place will be his. But now perhaps needs to be looking in his mirrors a little bit at Liam Robbo, who, as we said, has got some great pace at the moment. Yeah, very impressive from the Haas driver. Joined a few rounds into the season and he's already impressing. Currently P4, does have that 3-second penalty, but the pace he has is looking incredible. So at the moment it's only Johners that will actually overhaul him, so he's on course for a very impressive top 5 placing. Yeah, got to remember, of course, John is at the moment the one of the few men in the top 5 not to have a penalty, as Matt Tibbos is trying to go past Aidan Griffins. You said it's a bit of a risky one, trying a move into this corner, and Aidan Griffins has managed to hold on to it around the outside. Very impressive from the Racing Point driver, as Matt Tibbos is going to try and go down the inside now, where we saw Dan the man on the last tour make a move round the outside. Aidan pushes Matt onto the curb. Matt gets another penalty, and he has to settle at the moment to stay in 7th place, but that's 9 seconds worth of penalties now for Matt, and this race is falling apart in front of him, and he's even clipped the back of Aidan now. Yeah, I think Matt is trying to take every single risk possible, because Australia, it is incredibly difficult to overtake, so he has to take every risk he possibly can, but it's not paying off as they go side by side now, heading into turn 1. First the outside, then the inside. Matt Tibbos has the inside line. Aidan tries to hold it around the outside, but he's not able to do so, and Matt Tibbos clears Aidan for P6. Yeah, impressive stuff there from Matt. He held his nerve, and while being pushed towards the wall, very fairly by Aidan. It's a good defence, you have to say. He didn't overstep the mark. He just showed Matt that he wasn't going to let him go past easily, but Matt held his own, held his nerve, and took P6, and can now work about trying to catch Johners. But with 9 seconds worth of penalties, it's going to really affect him come the end of the race. Meanwhile, Liam Robbo is really starting to put pressure on Jack Hickman in front, and Dan the man hasn't been able to sneak away up the road, and Johners would still take P3 on the race result, just about. Jonas is clinging on by a thread as Matt picks up another penalty. This is going from bad to worse to even worse, and it's almost disastrous for the Mercedes driver now. He probably can't wait to leave Australia and head to Singapore. But Roy, it could still go any way, and all it needs is for Jack Hickman to pick up a penalty himself, and suddenly he's in a bit of trouble. Yeah, that's the thing. Dan the man not building the gap that he would have looked to do so. But yeah, Jack Hickey clearly within DRS, and if anything, he looks quicker than Dan at the moment. And Liam Robbo is now joining this battle for P2 on the road. But yeah, of course, Australia, it is easy to pick up a penalty around here. So Jack Hickman still needs to be careful. At the moment, he's got a net P2, but he has to keep Liam Robbo behind him and keep everything clean until the race ends.
Yep, Matt Tibos has really got the bit between his teeth at the moment. He's putting all kinds of pressure on Johners. He's almost changing gears for him. He's that close to the back of the Renault driver. He just needs to get a move on, and he knows that because he's got so many penalties which are going to affect his end time. Meanwhile, Liam Robbo still all over the back of the Racing Point. Dan the Man at the moment would have just about done enough to keep a podium, but it's marginal. And Johners, he needs to, if anything, he just needs to let Matt go. His race isn't with Matt, and Matt's going to try. Is he into this this fast left-hander? Roy, he's certainly thinking about it.
Yeah, he definitely gave it a go, but yeah, I think, as you said, I think Johners will be better off just letting Matt go. If Matt gets an opportunity, just let him go by. He's got 12 seconds of penalties. It's, you know, you're going to get him at the end of the race. So Johners not letting him go, though. I don't think he's close enough to just let him by. So yeah, Johners holding his own as things stand. I think he's looking for that podium place. He doesn't want to lose time with Matt.
All over the field at the moment. Sorry to interrupt you there, Roy. Just looking back, Corey's now trying to move into the penultimate corner up the inside of CJH, and a tidy move there from the Alfa Romeo driver, and he's got the move done. Matt Tibos, meanwhile, is going to try and go up the inside of Johners. We're on the final lap, and Matt Tibos has made his way, on the road at least, up into P5. So he's now got to put in a hell of a last lap to try and get as much of a gap he needs to those cars behind him. He might still make a top 10 finish, but with 12 seconds of penalties to his name, it isn't half going to be tricky. Aidan Griffiths has just been dropping back ever since he had that run-in with Liam Robbo a little bit earlier on in the race. His tyres perhaps crying out for help, and he's not listening. And Corey is listening to those tyres scream, and he's thinking this is an opportunity for himself to gain another place.
Yeah, Corey all over the back of Aidan. They're both very low on their ERS deployment, has to be said, so it's fairly even in that regard. Corey with the slipstream now heading into the chicane again. If you're not side by side, you're probably not going to get the move done through here. Aidan Griffiths holds on for P7 as things stand, but they still have the back straight to go.
Yeah, as Corey's just picked up another penalty, unfortunately for him, and it's absolutely we're out the front. And meanwhile, at the very front of this has been the same man all race, unchallenged. Softy has finally broken his duck around Melbourne to win the Australian Grand Prix for the first time in TGP2. Dan the Man will finish second on the road, but Jack Hickey has held on to take P2. Johners, I think, is going to be too far back to take the podium, but it's only by 4 tenths. It's very close. As we got the drivers funneling through the order now, is Matt Tibos going to hold out for 9th? No. 10th? Yes. Matt Tibos does take a point from Australia, while his main title rival has taken the full 25. And actually, that's a lie. Matt Tibos, I think, got the fastest lap, if my memory serves me right, Roy. But what an entertaining race we were treated to there. We had so many close battles on track. It was tricky which one to follow.
Yeah, it was an incredible race, you know, which for Albert Park isn't always the case, but then again, TGP always provides great entertainment. So, yeah, incredible racing from the front of the grid to the back.
Yeah, really good stuff there. But it's this man who once again finds himself on top of the podium. A very, very good win for Softy. Commanding, he dominated, much like he did in Spain last time out, and he takes his 62nd win. And James's record is coming closer and closer. He won't be able to get it this year, but he will certainly be planning to get it as soon as he can. So we'll give you a confirmed rundown of the provisional order for the TGP1 race at the Australian Grand Prix. Softy takes his 62nd race win at Albert Park on the top step of the podium once again. Jack Hickman started second, finished second. Dan the Man started third and finished third, but it wasn't as easy as it sounds. Johners making his way up a place in the end to P4. Liam Robbo, I'm going to give him as my driver of the day. Absolutely fantastic pace in that Australian Grand Prix. Comes home a respectable P5. Aidan Griffiths P6. It all went downhill from him once he got overtaken by Liam Robbo. CJH 7th for the McLaren driver. Causa up from 17th to 8th. Paul McGuinness in 9th, and Matt Tibos up from 15th and on the road finished 5th, but after penalties only came away with 2 points. And after that round, Roy, we end up with Softy on 295 points and Matt, his closest challenger, on 184. He already has over an 100-point lead.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say he has one hand on the trophy. It's going to take something disastrous to stop him at this point. But Yeah, just a bit of a nightmare for Matt Tibos, has to be said. His fastest lap, I believe, was 9/10 faster than the next fastest lap. So he had blistering pace out there, but it was just a messy race, it has to be said.
Yeah, and a good haul of points as well, of course, for the Racing Point team on 306 points after that race. AlphaTauri 298, so the gap's still close. It's only 8 points, but they do extend their lead in the Constructors' Championship by a single point. Every point counts around in the championship, Roy, as we all well know. But as we head into the twilight stage of the season, how damning is a result like that for Matt Tibos? I mean, that's just a bad qualifying. It could have been such a good race, but he just ruined it for himself, didn't he?
Yeah, I think, he threw everything at it, just make as many overtakes as he possibly could. But I think Matt at this point may have to stop thinking about the title and just go for individual race wins. Just take it race by race, see what happens. He has the pace to challenge for wins. So hopefully Singapore, his luck will change. Yeah,
he already has over 40 wins in the TGP1 series. So, he certainly knows how to put together a race win. And I think you're right. That's surely got to be his approach for these final few races. And I think you've got to say it's probably the same for Corey at this point as well. He's just... Those two, I don't think, have helped themselves at any point this season, really. They've had some really good races where they've really been able to, battle with Softy and give him a good run for his money. But too often, they've just been their own worst enemies.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think Softy, he's the king of consistency at the front. He has very little mistakes compared to the other guys at the front of the championship. And I think that's what's given him such a massive point lead. If the other drivers were a bit more consistent this season, then perhaps, it would have been a bit closer. But, hats off to Softy, I have to say. Yeah,
it's been a really solid season from the man from Nottingham. No other driver... Well, Corey, that's incorrect. Only Corey has been any other driver who's won more than one race this season. And Matt. I'm doing well at this stat. This is going really well, this bit. But, Corey and Matt have only won 2 races. And Softy, he's won, 10 now? Is that? He's just been... I guess, relatively speaking, he's been actually unchallenged, I'd say. I'd go as far as saying. I don't think that anyone has actually been able to give him a good run for his money this season. I think he's just been too good. And, that's certainly not a bad thing. We love to see the class coming out that we are, but it just makes me think that the others need to up their game, don't they?
Perhaps it's the mistakes that is costing them chances at victory. I think that's where Softy's strength lies. Even if he doesn't have the ultimate pace, he often ends up coming home with the win anyway because he just manages to keep it together for every lap of the race. So I think that's why the AlphaTauri driver is as far ahead as he is.
Yeah, and you got to take your hats off to him. He is cruising at the moment to yet another title. And, but he's the sort of driver who won't just take his foot off the gas. He will keep pushing 100%. Until he gets everything perfect, and I'm sure he will still get many a race win still to come this season as we head into, as we said, the latter stages of the season. He certainly won't be letting up himself, and he'll be trying to wrap up this title as early as possible, I would have thought, to ensure that there's no doubt about it. I want to sort of talk quickly as well there, Roy. You mentioned it during the race there as well. Liam Robbo, obviously, with some great turn of pace. He's not been in the league for too long, only a few weeks, but maybe finally starting to find his feet in the series.
Yeah, I think, as experience builds, he knows the guys he's racing in the league now. He knows what to expect from them. And I think that will only elevate him further up the field, and I think it'll only be a matter of time before he's challenging for race wins.
Yep. Well, obviously, this is the last season that we are contesting for TGP1 on F1 2020. As we look ahead to the move to F1 2021, likely at some point in the summer or late summer, early autumn time. So plenty of time for the drivers to recoup and get themselves in a good place to hopefully mount a title challenge against the all-conquering AlphaTauri driver that we have at the moment. Obviously, some new teams coming to the helm as well for the next game. So it'll be interesting to see any of the driver swaps that we get come into play, Roy, and the team challenges and battles that we have coming ahead as well. So we move on to a very different challenge now to Albert Park, but also relatively similar. Albert Park, you could say a little bit of a hybrid street circuit, but Singapore, very much a street circuit. Not under the lights, but still just as challenging in the daytime, isn't it, Roy?
Yeah, like the walls haven't moved, you still have to navigate your way around them and not hit them. So it's still just as much of a challenge in the day as it is at night. And Singapore can provide some interesting races, it has to be said. Safety car potential is incredibly high. So strategy could very well play into this.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that Singapore does right is we start the session now, qualifying in glorious sunshine, is that there is overtaking opportunities here. It may be tight, it may be technical, but there is opportunities for drivers to make a move. We've got one obviously very long straight on the run down to turn number 6. But you also have the opportunity at the end of the back straight, Roy. You can race around this track.
Yeah, especially towards the end of the race when people's tyres start to go off. We often see people pitting due to damage early on in the race, and they're trying to hold on to their tyres at the end of the race. So tyre wear is crucial around here as well. But yeah, racing, the opportunities are there if you can take them.
Yeah, very much so. As the cars start to filter their way out onto track now, we've got the two Haas drivers, the first on the road. So let's take an on board as we do then with Court, as we have a little look at this fantastic circuit and this brilliant setting as well, you have to say. In the daytime, still just as fantastic. We still got the lights on as well, just to make sure the drivers can see extra clearly. I'm not really sure why, but nonetheless, it's still a challenge. As Roy said, the walls haven't moved. It's just the time of day we're starting. So Roy, obviously this circuit relatively unchanged since its inaugural season back in 2008. Apart from this corner we're coming up to now, the Singapore Sling, still poses a challenge, just a very different one to perhaps the one it did when we first started out of this circuit. What's your thoughts on the changes that were made there? Did you prefer the triple apex Singapore Sling, or is this fast left-hander a welcome change?
I think I welcome the change of the Singapore Sling. It's actually the two corners afterwards that I don't quite understand, because they made it even tighter. It was an aid to aid overtaking, but I don't think that's actually quite worked. I think they've just made it a bit more fiddly than it needed to be. But still, the rest of the track is still the same as it was since 2008. Hard to believe we've been here for 12 years now, 13 years in F1, and it's become a modern classic. And I have to say, in the daytime, looks like an IndyCar track.
It certainly does, and I'd say it's brilliant. I think there's a lot of challenges to it, and it's more of it's a test of endurance for these drivers. I think a lot of the time. You mentioned there the difficulty a lot of them have with tyre wear, but the fatigue that comes into play as well. It's normally very hot, and the drivers have a lot of challenges, and as the race gets on, it certainly gets more tricky. As we come onto the main straight now, this is a really good opportunity for overtaking down into turn 6, and where we've seen many an incident before in TGP1.
Yeah, I've had a few here myself in the past in TGP1, but it's a corner that can be quite risky to make an overtake at. It is possible, but you have to make sure that there is room there to actually pass somebody. But it is the best overtaking opportunity on the circuit, and we should see plenty of action when the race gets underway. Yeah,
and there's obviously a couple of areas where they've, as we come through this, as you said, the tricky section there as Court makes a little bit of a lock-up. You've got this brilliant hairpin into here where you've got to be so committed on that slight right kink just before it, missing that wall by millimetres if you're right on it. As we head down into this corner here, Roy, obviously they moved the barrier back a little bit to allow a little bit more room on the exit. Did that aid overtaking? Has that made that an easier place to overtake now?
Yeah, I think it is slightly easier than it was before. You can run a bit deeper, and you can, it enables switchback manoeuvres heading into the left-right that succeeds it. So I think they have improved the racing ever so slightly around here since we first came here in 2008.
Yeah, I certainly would happen to agree with you there. As our first respectable lap time on the board from Court goes in at a 1 minute 36.0, which has just been beaten by his teammate Liam Robbo at a 1 minute 35.2. Immediately then beaten afterwards by Aiden on a 34.2. 34.8. The lap time starting to come through now. Kyle on a 34.5. Jonas breaks the trend and doesn't go fastest. He goes into P4 on a 35.2. Dan the man in the Ferrari in a 35.0. And we have the drivers making their way to the end of their laps now. Phil Bardwell comes in with a 34.1. A very good time there from the Ferrari driver. Jack Hickey into provisional P2. Softcop has come into the pit, so I understand he's invalidated his lap time. So not a good start to the session there for our championship leader. As we had 10 drivers put laps on the board at the moment. We're now on board with Matt Tibos coming around the final couple of corners. What's this lap time going to be good enough for? It's provisional pole on a 1 minute 33.9, as I'm sure we will see the lap times continue to tumble as the session goes on. And timing's an interesting and crucial thing about this track, Roy, you have to say, as it's such a long lap. It makes it touch and go for getting the 3 runs in for a lot of drivers, won't it?
Yeah, it's a very long track, and not only that, you can't really push on your outlap because there's so many corners around here. 23 corners is the most on the calendar, as far as I'm aware, and you correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, you can't really work the tyres too much because the soft tyres, especially around this circuit, do not last a long time at all. So yeah, the timing of the session is crucial. So at least Softy is guaranteed to get another 2 runs. In fact, he's already on another outlap. But yeah, it's also a kind of circuit where you need to get your banker lap in because it's so tricky to hook a lap up around here because there's walls, you know, either side of you at all times. And yeah, it's just what makes it a great qualifying session. Yeah,
it certainly does. And as you said, Softy heading out on an outlap again, but without that banker lap on board, so it's going to put him as a little bit of a disadvantage, but that hasn't really stopped him earlier on this season as well. He's still taken many a pole position in his illustrious career as Corey lights up the rear end, coming into the last sector there, heading under the grandstand as he's now invalidated his lap time and on his way back to the pits. And we've got Ginger Andy also on an outlap as well. And we've got Soft Cop just about himself heading under the grandstand. He will be starting a fast lap shortly, and we can watch him head around this brilliant circuit to have another run and have hopefully a more successful run for him at least at pole position. So let's ride on board then with the AlphaTauri driver. This relatively short run down to turn number 1. Spot your braking zone on the right hand side. Take as much curb as you dare through these sections and now hook it all up for turn number 3. Get on the power nicely. Accelerate out of the corner now down to turn number 4. Take as much curb as you dare on the left hand side again and onto the back straight now. DRS wide open for the man from Nottingham. He's got it all to do on this lap as he heads to the end of the first split, and he's purple in the first sector already. So that first lap not putting Softy off then, going for it as much as he can through this tight and technical section now then. You've got to commit to this left-hander, hope that the car sticks and don't hit the wall on the right-hand side, and that's exactly what he's done. Heading up now to the Singapore Sling. Take as much curb as you dare on the left-hand side. Get the car switched back. He does it nicely. How close is he going to run it to the wall? Does he skim it? He gets very close, but that's very nice too. Into the hairpin. No lock-up. Tidy on the power then for the AlphaTauri driver. Gets it on the DRS. Heading now down to another heavy braking zone, and he's still up. A little bit of a lock-up on the right front tyre. Squeezes the power down nicely, then flicks it into the left. Get it hooked up on the right. Take as much curb as you can through these 2 corners. They'll carry you through. Try to avoid the wall on the right-hand side. It's so inviting to hit it, but you have to decline it. In just a few more corners to go then. Keeps it nice and neat and tidy. This is a really good lap from the AlphaTauri driver. Flicks it into the last couple of corners. Hope that you've still got life left in the tyres. And he goes 0.2 of a second quicker than Matt Tibos to take provisional pole.
Yeah, great lap from Softy there. Nice use of the power on the exit. I could see him short shifting out of the slow corners. So the AlphaTauri driver provisional pole by 0.2 of a second, but of course there's still half of the qualifying session left to go.
Yeah, and gaps maybe not as much as we would have thought at this stage. Matt Tibos well within reach on an outlap at the moment for his second run. Phil Bardwell less than half a second off as well. So still a few drivers in with a chance of mixing it up the order at the moment. We've got Liam Robbo, who is the first of the drivers on their second runs. Not finding any time in the first sector for the Haas driver. Dan the Man, the next car on the road, down in P7 at the moment. Roy, as I mentioned at the end of the last race, Dan the Man, a very consistent runner so far this season. He's having a great season, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he would have liked his consistency a bit more last season. If anything, he might have actually had the pace to challenge for a title last season had he strung it all together. But yeah, Dan the Man, always a TGP veteran at this point. He's been here for many years now. Sorry that sounded that may not have been the correct
I'm sure
word.
he wouldn't mind being called a veteran, but hopefully he'll let us off that
legend, one. Sorry.
Yeah, say legend, and that suddenly changes that phrase a lot.
My apologies, yes. But anyway, yeah, he's a very consistent runner, always very fast, always up the front, and he'll be looking to improve on the P7 that he's currently in right now.
Yeah, well, he was half a second up on his previous best and purple in Sector 1. He's 8 tenths up on his personal best in the middle sector. Dan the Man hopefully tuning into our commentary and hearing all the nice things we're saying about him, despite Roy calling him a veteran. He's finding time around this lap, and the Ferrari driver with just a few corners to go, and he'll surely fancy his chances at a front row slot as the way things are going. Purple in the first 2 sectors, finding time just about everywhere he is. Keep it nice and tidy, Dan. Let's get you mixing on the front row. Just 2 corners to go. Flicks it in as much as he dare, and the short run to the line, and it's P3. He lost time in the last sector.
Yeah, I noticed he started to derate before the last corner, so I think maybe that cost him a little bit of time in the final sector, but still a very solid effort from the Ferrari driver. Ferrari currently occupying the second row of the grid.
Yep, so good run so far then for the Ferraris. Matt Tibos, meanwhile, coming through the middle sector, finding a little bit of time. But as you so rightly said there, Roy, on Softy's lap, he was so good in this final sector, short shifting out of the acceleration zones, keeping the wheel spin to a minimum, which you've got to do. And Matt Tibos will have a job to better that, but he's going to try his best. And just a few corners to go. Can he mix it with the AlphaTauri driver squirreling coming out of the exit? He's certainly not short shifting round there. And just 2 corners to go. Has he got enough life left in the tyres to really challenge Softy? Takes as much curve as he dare on the inside, and it's no improvement. No improvement as Softy heads out on another outlap. And it's advantage Softy at the moment as Jack Hickman, unseen bias between then, pushed himself up to P3.
Yeah, it's very competitive up the front, 33.9, 34.0, 34.1, 34.1, like it's incredibly close, so you need to nail every corner around this lap if you want to be as far up the grid as you possibly can be. Yeah,
you certainly do, and drivers then with enough time to get into the pits, bolt on a new set of the soft tyres, and head out again. So we'll give you a rundown of the order then with just over 5 minutes to go. Your provisional pole sitter Softy just heading out on an outlap at the moment for his last run. Matt Tibos at the moment joining him on the front row, just less than 2 tenths as you said there, Roy, off our provisional pole sitter Jack Hickey in the Racing Point P3 at the moment. Down the Man in P4. His lap was looking very neat and tidy, but it just got away from him in the last sector there. Phil Bardwell P5 at the moment, not much separating the 2 Ferraris, just 13 thousandths of a second, and then a bit of a gap back to Kyle in P6, the Alfa Romeo driver up there at the moment. Aidan Griffin's P7, the other Racing Point. Liam Robbo P8, Jonathan P9, and CJH rounding up the top 10. And I've only just noticed this, Roy. Corey's down in 15th with no lap on the board. We said that he's lacked consistency this year, this season even, but that's really not good.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up because I noticed that myself. He is yet to set a lap along with Alistair and Andy. And yeah, the Alfa Romeo driver will be looking to be at the front of the grid, not at the back. So he still has time. He still has time for one more run, but only one more run. We saw him invalidate a run earlier on in the qualifying session, but yeah, he's going to have to find a lap if he wants to have a good grid position.
Yeah, he's got to try and pull something out of somewhere, and he's got to try and do it relatively quickly. Just less than 5 minutes to go. He's still in the pits at the moment, but he'll be wanting to put in a good run at the end, you would have thought. Meanwhile, someone on a good run at the moment is Softy, finding time in that first sector. It looked like he did a good enough job last time round, but he thinks that he can find more time. Is he going to keep it neat and tidy through this middle section of the track where it can so easily get away from you? Flicks it in then into the hairpin across the Anderson Bridge, getting on the power now for the back straight. You've got to brake so early for this corner. It's always earlier than you think it. It's very easy to catch drivers out. A little bit of a lock-up again on that inside right tyre. But the man from Nottingham is on a good run at the moment. Heading his way past the football pitch at the moment. Paul McGuinness has unfortunately crashed out, so he's not going to be going any better than 13th. And just a couple more corners to go then. The AlphaTauri driver provisionally on pole. Is he going to be extending his run at the front? 2 corners to go. He flicks it in with the ultimate commitment and does a 33-1. Wow, take that, everyone else.
Yeah, I noticed. I thought that there might have been a glitch with the timing graph because it told me he was half a second up after the second sector, and I thought, no way. But wow, 33-1 now, 6/10 clear of Liam Robbo, who's jumped up into second place in the Haas. So another incredible run from the Haas driver. But what can Matt Tibos and Jack Hickey do? And Dan the Man is also on an outlap.
Yep, Liam Robbo following him on the road and following Softy with a good time. Phil Bardwell currently on a lap at the moment as well, but not finding any time in the first sector. Still a long way to go around this lap for the Ferrari driver though. Flicks it into the hairpin then. Be nice and neat and tidy on the power, which he is. Phil Bardwell then to the end of sector 2. Is he finding any time? No, he's not. So an important last sector then for the Ferrari driver. We've got a yellow flag in the second sector. This is the point of qualifying, of course, where we've got a lot of drivers trying to get out of the way of each other. It may be a long track round here, but it's easy to catch traffic. And that will be very conscious in the minds of a lot of drivers. We've got 2 minutes left to go. We've still got a couple of drivers in the pits. They're leaving it very much to the last minute. Court and Andy. Andy has finally got a time on the board now, but only good enough for P12. Phil then 2 corners to go for his final run in qualifying, and it's only improvement to 5th. 9/10 of a second off Softy. Roy, I think we've cursed everyone by saying just how close it was a couple of minutes ago. As the gap seems to be quite large now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Softy's gone and just gone into his own postcode as things stand. Yeah, I think the gap between him and any other cars will be bigger than any other cars on the grid as things stand. But yeah, it should still be good after that. But still, then Matt Tibos still has another lap to go, as does Jack Hickey. But they're going to require a hell of a lap to beat Softcop as things are currently standing. Yeah, and we got Dan the Man just beginning his final run of qualifying now, using as much of the track as he could physically manage going into turn 1 there, trying to open up that corner as much as you can. So easy to catch too much curb and push yourself out wide. Dan the Man finding about 1/10 of a second in the first sector. We've just had a driver move up the order, and I can't see for the life of me who it was. It was Corey. He moves himself up to P7, but he will not be impressed with that, I am sure. It's an all Alfa Romeo 4th row at the moment, and at the moment it's an all Ferrari 3rd row, but Dan the Man is going to try his best to sort that out and push his Ferrari further up the order. Coming through the hairpin now. A tow from his teammate. I think he will. Yeah, I think... Oh, he is going to get a tow from his teammate. You're very right. He's a little bit of help there, and he's slightly up on his own time. The only person I think he'll probably displace is actually his own teammate who just gave him the tow. But yeah, Dan the Man, he'll probably remain in P6 as things stand unless he can find a brilliant final sector. Clip all the apex. He's done very nicely under the grandstand here, but yeah, Dan with it all to do if he wants to improve. Yep. It's a lot of curb through there though. Yeah, he did take a lot of curb, but he slowed the car right down, actually, to open up that exit as much as he could. Has that helped him? Yes, it has, actually. He's gone up to P3 and displaced Matt Tibos. So Matt with it all to do then. But it's quite close between the two of them. Only a matter of hundredths. But, well, Matt won't want to be P3. He'll be wanting to be challenging for pole. But at the moment, at least, he's not even in the top 3. But he's found he's purple in the middle sector, Dan. Roy even. He's found 2/10 on his own lap as Jack Hickman goes up into P2. Yes, and I apologise again to Dan for the pessimism there. He did actually indeed find a brilliant final sector. You're just going at your co-commentator in TGP2 at the moment, aren't you? I mean, poor Dan. I mean, he's not going to want to come into the commentary box tomorrow. At least the first comment was meant to be a compliment that was just worded badly. But yeah, Matt Tibos around the final 2 corners. Where can he go? He goes up into P2. Just okay, the gap has come down significantly at least. So Softy, not so much in his own postcode. He has his own neighbours now. So Yeah, Matt Tibos in P2, 2 tenths down. So we should have a race on our hands.
Yeah, I think the phrase for an estate agent like myself would be no near neighbours, and I think that Matt Tibos does qualify for that at the moment. So Softy not yet having to put his house on the market, but if he did, it would get a good price. Up at the moment in pole position with just CJH left to run, and I don't mean to be offensive to CJH at all, but I don't think he's going to be challenging Softy's pole position. I don't actually know where he's gone, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't on pole position. It was only 12th for the McLaren driver. So, Roy, the gap did come down a little bit in the end as we've lost Johners, unfortunately, who would have been in a good position, you have to say, down in P11. He would have been starting on fresh tyres. Hopefully he can get back into the session. But let's give you a rundown of our grid then for the Singapore Grand Prix. Softcop does take pole position again this season. Matt Tibos joining him from the front row. A very common front row of the grid so far this season. Jack Hickey, a good lap from him to get up into P3 when the session looked lost for the Racing Point drivers. Liam Robbo in the Haas. Improving again, P4. Good job from him. Dan the man in P5. I think he'll be disappointed with that on reflection. ART Carl put in a good lap at the end to move himself up onto the third row. Phil Bardwell in P7 and Corey in P8. Alistair Bain sneaking into the top 10 with his brother joining him on the fifth row. And as we said, Johners just outside of the top 10 but with a fresh tyre choice. If he gets back in.
Well, he's just come back online, so hopefully he will be able to. But yeah, it's not impossible to get a good result from the back of the grid here, but strategy will have to play into your hands. But I can tell you now, the race will be dry, as you can see on the screen. It's currently dry, and it will remain that way for the duration of this race. So I think safety cars will have to come into play for people at the back. But I suppose if you're at the very back of the grid, with how difficult it is to overtake around here, you might as well just throw on a set of mediums and hope that a late safety car will come out in your favour. Yeah,
as you said there, safety cars are very common around here. It's such a nice day out there. I wish our commentary box was outside. We get a good tan coming on for the spring and summer season to come into play. But unfortunately for us, cooped up inside, having to look out at the nice weather that we have here in Singapore. So, the drivers are getting themselves ready. We're ready in the commentary box. Are you watching at home? We've got 5 lights on the gantry. And we're underway for the Singapore Grand Prix, and it's a good start from everyone, relatively clean, as we make our way down into turn number 1. Matt Tibos is going to try for the lead, and there's contact, and Matt Tibos is round, and it's disaster for the Mercedes driver, sent spinning to the back of the order, and he put his nose where Softy didn't want him to, and he finds himself facing the wrong way, and it's disastrous for him, as we've now got a Ferrari gone spinning of Dan the Man. Disastrous for him as well. We've got all sorts of drama on this opening lap. Alistair's lost a bit of his front wing, as Liam Robbo in the midst of all this has made his way up to P2.
Chaotic start there. I think Matt Tibos may have been a little bit ambitious heading into turn 1. I don't think Softy quite hit the apex. He did leave a bit of room on the inside, but it was the Mercedes that was sent spinning. No doubt the stewards will have a look at that, but I'm sure there'll be conflicting opinions. But Matt Tibos now currently running in P15 ahead of what I believe is the AI of Johners.
Yeah, disastrous there for the Mercedes driver. He didn't have a good time in Australia. He's headed further north and he's still not having a good time. Meanwhile, CJH and Court have climbed 6 places on the opening lap. Phil Bardwell's gone backwards, but he's trying to make his way back up the order as Paul McGuinness has climbed 7. Fantastic start for the Red Bull driver.
Yeah, avoiding all the contact as Jonas has rejoined the session and he can now get his race underway. Matt Tibos has already found his way up into 12th. Has there been another incident? But it's not looking great for the Scotsman at the moment. P13, 14 and 15. But yeah, Matt Tibos already ahead of that gaggle.
Yep, so we've got the AWS tyre predictions there for when we're expecting some of the drivers to start peeling into the pits. It's Aidan Griffin who's been going backwards, actually, in the midst of all that.
As we have a hash. Liam Robbo spun.
Oh, disastrous. He was up in second. He made such a good start. And he's now facing the wrong way and missing some of his front wing. Has he retired, actually? He's not moved. Oh, there we go. He's got himself going again. Oh, that's disastrous for Liam. It was going so well.
And Matt Tibos has already found his way back up into 9th and is already pressuring Mayor Quemby in the other AlphaTauri for P8.
Unbelievable. In the midst of all this as well, we've got Corey in P3. out of nowhere. He's kept his nose clean in the early couple of laps. Matt Tibos then going to the inside of Aiden, which then of Owen even, which then becomes the outside for turn number 6. Matt Tibos is up to 8th already, so carving his way back through the order as he needs to, but he will still be ruining that opening lap. As we got a little bit of team radio from Liam Robertson. He's not very happy about his own mistake, it seems. But meanwhile, out front, keeping away from the rest of the carnage, as softy as Corey is now starting to put Jack Hickman under pressure.
Yeah, it's a brilliant opening sequence of the race for Corey. As you said, pressuring Jack Hickey for P2. Not quite close enough to do it at the moment, but the Alfa Romeo driver will be eyeing up another podium in this season.
Yeah, as a reminder there of the predicted pit stops then. Anticipated drivers to come in around about lap 4 or 5. And it's going to be close to get the mediums to the end of the race around those sort of times. We might see a couple of drivers brave the hard tyres, perhaps. I think it'd be the wrong decision to do so, as we got from 12th downwards already in the pits, or already pitted even. And Matt Tibos already up to P8. As Softy extending his lead out the front now to as much as 3 seconds. And as DRS has been enabled, which will be music to Corey's ears.
Yeah, Corey all over the back of the racing point for P2. And actually, interesting fact, Softy has never actually won a race around Singapore. He said he's always had the pace around here, but it's never come together for him. And we still have 12 laps to go, so a lot can still happen in this race. But at the moment, Softy with a 3.2 second lead over the racing point of Jack Hickman.
Yeah, all looking rosy for Softy at the moment. As you said, a long way to go in this one. And as we said, this is one of the toughest races on the calendars. There's not multiple calendars. There has been last season, I guess. But Softy, meanwhile, has got himself in a nice little bubble. 3.4 seconds is his gap in the lead at the moment. But the drivers will be starting to watch their tyres, starting to watch their curbs. It's very easy to pick up penalties around this track, and also watching their front rings as well. Those rules are lurking, and it is easy to clip one of them and end up with a little bit of damage. I have to say, Roy, I kind of expected a little bit more from Phil so far. After the chaos in the first lap that we had in the first few corners, I would have expected him to have made up more ground, but he hasn't at the moment.
Yeah, I think Phil, he's currently struggling in the dirty air, because like CJH and Kurt, they're on the medium tyres currently running in P4 and P5. So this could work out brilliantly for them if a safety car comes out later on in the race. But yeah, Phil Bardwell in the dirty air, he's not really having a great time right now. But he's still in P6, still in a solid position. And I say that as he picks up a 3-second penalty. So I seem to be cursing everyone tonight. Yeah, you do. As we've got Corey, who's coming to the pits. He's the first one of the front runners to make the call to come into the stops. But as you rightfully said there, Roy, we've got 2 drivers in now P3 and P4 with CJH and Court. Wouldn't normally find themselves in that position, but have a great opportunity on that alternative strategy. Keep it clean, boys. You could end up with a solid result, as you've still got Phil Bardwell very much in check, you have to say. He's really not been able to make any inroads to the drivers in front. It's surprising, I have to say. Also surprising to see Corey come in so early there, Roy. Yeah, I think that's an odd one. That could work out in his favour, but if it's a safety car that happens anytime soon, that's just going to be an absolute disaster for him. So he's currently running in P11, but yeah, I'm not sure if that was the wisest decision for Corey to make. I think he wants to make an undercut on Jack Hickey, but again, the safety car probability is so high around here, so it may not work out for him. And he's got to take those medium tyres, 12 laps to the end. That's a big ask for any driver. Corey's a decent enough driver in himself, but that's quite an ask to get those tyres as far into the race as that. But he'll give it a damn good go. And I had to say, I thought he had quite a lot to lose actually after the start he had. If he'd done that on lap 1, given his grid position, I probably would have understood. But up in P3, you've made up a lot of ground. Alistair Baines retired, which could bring out a very unwanted VSC or safety car for any of the drivers behind. Softy has decided to pit. And we have got a virtual safety car. That is just perfect timing for the AlphaTauri. As Phil's dived into the pits as well. Jack Hickey's dived into the pits. And everyone else is piling into the pits. And it's disastrous for Corey, Roy. Yeah, I don't think this is going to work out very well for Corey whatsoever. I think, currently P11. I don't know how many of these cars he's actually going to jump. I don't think he's going to do Jack any Hickey. Of them. Yeah, he is fortunate that it is an incredibly slow pit lane around this track, so he will, I think, jump just a few people, but like he's not going to be anywhere near the podium places.
Is he going to be ahead of Matt?
I think he will just about be ahead of Matt, yes.
Yes.
But he's behind Phil now, and he's currently running in P7.
Yeah, and he's having to slam the anchors on, as obviously he did his best there to get as much of a gap as he could and get ahead as many of the cars as he could, but that's disastrous for Corey. But what a gift for the other drivers. I mean, in fairness to Softy, really good call, as we're now back under racing conditions again, and Corey is under a lot of pressure from Paul and Matt straight away. Paul trying his best. He's having a great race at the moment, Paul, you have to say, in a really good position, the Red Bull driver, the sole Red Bull tonight. But Softy had to make that call himself. The virtual safety car wasn't out at that point. So a crucial call there made by Softy to pit at that time and put himself in a really good position for this race. You have to say there, Roy, that could have just won him the race.
Yeah, I think, you know, even if a safety car comes out again, I think Softy will still lead this race. I think he's close enough to the guys ahead. I think the guys on the mediums at the front of the field, they had to stay out. They'd no other choice. So it'll be interesting to see how their race will fan out as things
here we
progress.
go. Roy, sorry to interrupt. We've got Matt Tibos up the inside of Paul, who went a little bit wide at the end of the back straight. Matt Tibos takes a lot of curb, too much, gets a penalty, but does get the position ahead of Paul and up into P8 as we got a yellow flag again in Sector 3. I think something's happened perhaps to Owen Quimby. Can't quite see there. Yes, Owen has found the wall. A very bad moment because he's missed the pits and got to do a full lap, as Corey's now also picked up a penalty further back.
I'm not quite sure what wall he hit because it's the outside of his front wing as you go into those final two corners. So I mean, he must have run really wide, but maybe took too much curb on the entry. But yeah, it's a disaster for Owen. He has to make his way around the whole lap of Singapore. And I think he's just keeping out of everyone's way who comes up to the back of him now. Yeah,
and disaster for Owen. He wasn't running particularly highly anyway in the net order, but he certainly isn't going to be running very high now. I'm going to have to do a whole lap with that broken front wing, and he's another man who will be praying for a safety car. Have CJH and Co have just got to stay out for as long as their tyres can physically last for now, haven't they? That's the only way they're going to get as good a result as they had in the palm of their hands a few laps ago before the VSC came out.
Yeah, I think the VSC has not worked out for these two guys up at the front. But then again, they will have fresh tyres at the end. But again, Singapore, you can overtake, but it's not easy. So I think Court is actually the quicker driver of these two at the front, so I think Court will be hoping to get past the McLaren driver, but yeah, I think they just have to stay out for as long as they possibly can at this point. No, I wouldn't pit any earlier than lap 11.
No, they've just got to be in it for the long run at the moment. Matt Tibos and Corey, the closest battle on track at the moment. Certainly at the start of the season, I wouldn't have been thought... As Matt Tibos has hit the wall! Disaster! Oh, it's going from bad to worse for Matt in this race, just like it did in the last race. He's just, I'm lost for words at this point. Actually, he's making a rod for his own back at the moment, Roy.
Yeah, I think there's a few, desperate mistakes that are being made here as he's trying to pass the Alfa Romeo of Corey, but now I believe, he has picked up wing damage. So I think Matt. Well, I don't really know where he's going to go in this race now. I mean, he's gonna struggle. He just has to keep Paul behind him now and hope for a top 7 finish. Yeah,
still, he doesn't seem to be struggling too much. But Sector 1 isn't where the lack of front wing hurts you around this track. It's into this middle sector and the last sector, more importantly, where you got those 90-degree corners. It's too early to pit and go back onto the softs because they won't get to the end. So that's now another driver hoping for a safety car. I don't even think a virtual safety car is going to help him too much. Disaster for Mercedes.
Yeah, like a virtual safety car would have to be perfectly timed to help him out. I mean, I think he would still rejoin in the top 11 and potentially have the pace to overtake people, but it's an absolute disaster for Matt. Once again, 2 races now tonight that have not gone his way, and he started on the front row and was challenging for the lead into turn 1, but just that contact has really turned his race upside down. Yeah, and meanwhile, I don't think we can even call him a championship
rival anymore, because Softy's just in a League of One, it seems, at the moment. And Matt Tibos hits the wall again, and I thought he was going to dive into the pits there, but thought better of it. But, they're all falling by the wayside, and Softy's staying consistent at the moment in the net lead of a race and about to end his Singapore duck at that, after ending his Australia duck before. He's just... He's quick and consistent, and you just can't fight that at the moment. And these two, which we're watching on track at the moment, Corey and Matt, are literally trying everything they've got, but at the moment it's just not good enough as Matt hits the wall again.
Yeah, I don't know, has Matt actually damaged the other side of his wing? Yes, he has. He's going to have to pit now. Surely he's going to lose too much time. He'll have nice, slipstream down the
straight line speed's going to be fantastic.
Yeah. But, now he's going to suffer through here. So, yeah, I think Matt, he'd be better off just pitting now. And if there's a safety car, he'll have the pace to perhaps get his way back into the points. But he's not going to go any further up the grid as things stand. Yeah,
physically struggling. You can see now the understeer that he's getting in that car really starting to hurt him. Dropping back into the clutches of Paul, dropping back from Corey, locking tyres. It's painful to watch. Meanwhile, we got Aidan Griffins putting a lot of pressure on Kyle, who had just got past him, actually. So we've got a really good battle going on here, it seems. The Racing Point driver trying to elevate himself up from P10. Not fancying it into the end of the back straight. Carl's run a little bit wide. Aidan's using his overtake, but he hasn't got much battery left. And Roy, our closest battle on track at the moment, P9, and this could get tasty.
It could get tasty indeed. They're both on very similar levels of ERS management as well, so I think DRS would be the thing that really helps Aidan out. He is very close. He does look like the quicker driver of these two. So yeah, Aidan all over the back of the Alfa Romeo of ART Kyle, who was running at the front last season, as Matt comes into the pits and picks up a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. It's going from bad to worse. Aidan picks up a 3-second penalty for multiple warnings as well. That's not good for the Racing Point driver, so if he clears Kyle, he's going to have to escape down the road. But Matt Tibos, well, I mean, what can you say? We see in real life when it goes wrong for Mercedes, it really does go wrong, and he's currently running in P11, and I think Dan the Man and Liam Robbo may actually come out ahead of him. In fact, they will. So Dan the Man, who's also having a disastrous race, as is Liam Robbo, have both passed him and are now running in P11 and P12.
Yeah, not going very well at all for Matt Tibos, but still a lot can happen around Singapore, as we've said, but he's going to have to hope for a bit of a miracle and a pretty strong incident further else in the field. Back to the battle for what is now P8 between Kyle and Aidan. It's so it's brilliant watching two cars follow each other closely around this track, as you really can see each driver committing. Aidan Griffins then with the DRS. Is he going to try and move? No, he can't this time around. Kyle again running a little bit wide, but neither of them were particularly good as deployment, as you rightfully said there, Roy, as we've got CJH and Matt Tibos is out of the race. Disaster, and we've got a virtual safety car, and CJH and Court have pitted. Fantastic timing for the two of them.
Perfect for these two drivers. There'll be a factor in the end of this race now. Can they potentially sneak a podium? Probably not. I think they're too far out of reach for that, as Court has to change his wing. I wonder if he picked up damage, so the virtual safety car will be cancelled out for him. But well, it's going great for CJH and potentially Court as well. I think Court will rejoin in P8 or 9, so he's still in the points and he will have those fresh set of softs. So can Johners get ahead of him? Yes, he can. So Court rejoins in P9.
Aidan Griffins is pitted as well there, actually, but the safety car, the VSC sort of ended at a bad time for him, and he lost a bit of time, actually. But CJH with a great opportunity now, P5, fresh tyres, and the two drivers in front of him with penalties. But Phil is about 11 seconds up the road, so it's going to be a tall order for him to close down the podium, but not impossible now, as we've got a yellow flag in sectors 2 and 3. I think Jinder Andy had an incident there, but he's got himself back going again now. Dan the Man back into the top 10 now. Aidan Griffins obviously just behind him on fresh rubber. You would have thought that would be relatively easy pickings. We'll keep an eye out for Court as well, as he will hope to close down Johners for an extra couple of points. But CJ Hateson, our man on the move, and already staring at the back of Corsa, as we now have Owen Quimby out of the race. It's almost turning into a bit of a race of attrition in the latter stages, Roy.
Yeah, he had a big incident at turn 4, I believe, or turn 5, and yeah, he's lost his wing completely. There's no point continuing really, so yeah, Merrick Wemby is out of this race. He wasn't going to pick up points, so nothing lost, and he has left the session.
Yep, so CJH then all over the back of Corey at the moment without a penalty. He'll want to keep it that way, and he's going to try and make his way into P4, is he? Around the outside into turn number 1. That's brave, and that's a great move from the McLaren driver. Corey's not going to let it go without a fight, though. Going to try and hold it into the inside of turn number 3, but it seems like the McLaren driver has got that move sorted for now.
I think Corey's picked up wing damage somewhere along the way. The right side of his front wing is missing an end plate, so this is brilliant for CJH, currently running in P4, 11 seconds back from Phil Bardwell, but Corey is still going for it. He's on the inside heading into turn 7 or 6, I believe, and he's run wide, he's missed the corner, he's missing that front downforce, and yeah, CJH will keep P4.
Yep, he's missing his wing, and he's missing the road, and he's missing P4. CJH does make his way up into 4th place, and now has a mammoth task of closing down 11 seconds on the car in front in, well, what is 5 laps? 2 seconds a lap around Singapore with trying not to get a penalty. That's doable, isn't it, Roy?
Well, I mean, if everything goes your way, then yes, perhaps. But it is, yeah, a very tall order. He already has closed in 3/10 though, since we've said that. So he is clearly the quicker driver of the two. And Phil Bardwell does, of course, have that penalty, so that will be a little bit helpful for him. But yeah, CJH in the McLaren looking locked on for P4 as things stand. But if things go wrong for Phil Bardwell, then a podium could very well be on the cards.
Yeah, very much so. Softy cruising out in front. 6 seconds is the gap between him and Jackie. Oh, I just said that. That was perfect timing, wasn't it? Fortunately for Softy, not fortunately for Jack Hickman, the gap is 6.2 seconds, and Softy's penalty being a mere 3 seconds. As the penalty's starting to roll in now, Roy. I keep calling you Dan. I'm ever so sorry. It's because you two just do such an iconic job in commentary together. But we've got CJH with he has closed that gap down a little bit, hasn't he? It's less than 10 seconds now. He's got the bit between his teeth, and he just has a mere 6.5 seconds to find to be in a shout with that podium position. Yeah,
if Phil's tyres really wear away, then he might just do it here, because I think Phil did actually pit quite early because of that earlier virtual safety car. So CJH with the perfect strategy as things stand, and yeah, he's got all his end plates still intact. He's got the fresher tyres. He's on the softer compound. Phil has a penalty. This may not be over.
No, and you have to say perhaps he would have benefited more if it had been a full safety car rather than a virtual safety car, and maybe that would have helped him a little bit more. But yeah, he's still got an opportunity to do this, and he's dropping Corey very quickly. But he's going to have to watch his ERS deployment. Phil's got a lot of battery left, and Phil could still use that to his advantage if the gap starts to come down too much. But Phil, actually, Roy, I've just checked onto Phil. He's got front wing damage and another penalty. This is very much not over.
Yeah, I think this is actually playing into CJH's hands now with this wing damage and the penalty. So yeah, 8.6, 8.5, 8.4 now. I mean, the gaps just keep going down. There's no point even reading it. So yeah, CJH flying now, and there's only 8.2 down the road from Phil.
Yep, and which works out at about 2.2 after you take those penalties into account. Phil Bottle Job Bardwell, living up to his name once again. Looked quids in for a podium, and is now finding himself penniless, and could be very close under attack, actually even on the road from CJH, if Phil's damage as bad as it looks. Really not helping Ferrari's chances in the Constructors' title.
Yeah, and we see Court now trying to make a move, and ART Kyle dives to the inside. Very late move from the Dutch driver, but he is clearly on the inside, trying to go around the outside to the next corner now with ART Kyle, and he makes the move stick. Well done from the Dutch driver Kurt Gillison, and well, making use of those fresh tyres, and now he's going to chase after Paul in P6. Paul having a great race.
Yeah, the lesser favourite Skillison has made his way into the top 7. Unfortunately for him, had to change that front wing in his only pit stop, but has now got a chance to close down Paul, who himself has a penalty. So it's really working out for these drivers on the alternate strategy, Roy. As we've got 2.5 laps left to go, Softy comfortably out in front, nearly 8 seconds his gap now. CJH got that gap down now just a smidge over 7 seconds. He could be well within range, but he just needs to keep it clean. That's the main thing now. He won't know about Phil's damage. He'll see the gap coming down, but he might just think that's tyre wear. But he just needs to keep it out of the wall, out of the curbs. And that podium will be his as Dan the Man picks up another penalty further back. And Kyle, blimey, I just caught the edge of that, but it looked like he was destined for a wheel and suspension failure there as he was hurtling towards the wall. Very well held there from the Alfa Romeo driver.
Yeah, Kyle looks to be struggling with the setup. I've seen him having a good few steps of oversteer, and I think he's just hoping to keep it all together. He's currently running P8, so he's still going to score multiple points. But I don't think the setup is quite right on that Alfa Romeo.
No, and Court has managed to pick up DRS actually off the back of Ginger Andy's Ghost car circling the track at the moment, so that is going to assist him closing down Paul McGuinness. CJH has got the gap down now to 6 seconds, and now it's just ticked under, so at the moment he will be on the podium, the McLaren driver. And his race really coming to him well, but it was all about keeping his nose clean on the first couple of laps. And he did it well, and it could reap some rewards at the moment, and that reward being a podium. A bit of actually they do drink in Singapore, so it's not, is it rose water in Singapore, or is it champagne? Is it the proper stuff?
I believe it's champagne.
That's all right then. He'll have a taste of something quite nice at the end of the race for him then. But I've ever tried rose water, so I don't know that that's not nice, of course. Have you tried rose water before, Roy?
I haven't actually, no. I don't think it's... I think I've maybe used it before in cooking something, but yeah, it didn't smell very nice, I can tell you that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's disappointing, actually. It sounds like one of those things that should be really nice. Was it
I think it
particularly
tastes like
floral
flowers.
smelling?
Yes, it is. It is literally made from roses. Yeah.
It does smell of roses. Oh, that's something at least.
Yeah, it smells nice. Don't know if I want to taste it though.
Surely it's not actually the water from a rose.
Kyle.
Oh, Kyle's in the wall. He
Kyle's
dropped
out
it.
of the race.
He dropped it in that corner that he nearly dropped it at last lap. So clearly he didn't learn his lesson.
No, and he's going to drop out the points.
Disaster with just over a lap to go. Unbelievable. Oh, he'll be gutted with that. A regular front runner last year, and as you said at the top of the show, Roy, dropped the ball a little bit this season, and he's not having a very good time of it at the moment. CJH has got that gap well within the 6 second window that he needs, but he just needs to avoid another penalty, just getting a penalty himself. Keep it away from those curbs, CJ. All right, we want to see you on the podium. Court, meanwhile, is going to jump ahead of Paul, and if he has a good last lap, could find himself jumping ahead of Causa as well, but someone who doesn't really need to worry about any penalties, despite having 3 seconds of his own, is Soft Cop. Barely spoke about him in this race since the turn one, but he has kept his nose relatively clean ever since then. Breaks his duck around Singapore as well. It's the perfect night for Softy. 2 poles, 2 wins, and he is cruising to another title. He's got a hand and a finger, it seems, on the trophy at the moment. Jack Hickey on the podium again. Another second place for him. He'll be delighted with that. Phil Bardwell is going to cross the line in P3, but CJH is going to pick up that podium. Well done, sir. A very, very strong showing from him. Cause has picked up another penalty at the end and dropped behind Paul, actually, unseen by us. And Court obviously has jumped the both of them. So the alternate strategy working well for Court and CJ today. Jonas is going to cross the line a lonely P8. And then we've got a bit of a wait for the rest of the drivers. Here comes Aidan across the line, P9. And Liam Robbo recovered in P10. But what could have been for the Haas driver? P2 at the end of lap 1. And then found himself buried in a wall at the end of lap 1. And Dan the Man, I think, is going for fastest lap here, Roy.
Yeah, he's on the soft tyres. I think he's pitted. And, well, I don't know. The graphics don't really tell us, yeah.
The anti-climax of that is going to build up so much that it's probably going to get to the result. CJH, rightfully driver of the day in this race. A very, very strong performance for him. Getting on the podium as we wait to see who has the fastest lap. Did Dan just about sneak it in. Softy again on the top step of the podium. That is becoming a very familiar sight in the AlphaTauri colours as he celebrates another race victory there. And this time joining him on the podium, Jack Hickey and CJH. What a fantastic race for him. Ending up on the podium in the end. He will be chuffed to bits with that result. And a well-deserved result as well, I have to say. And he picked up another good score. So let's give you a rundown of our provisional order then from the Singapore Grand Prix. Softicop picks up another race win from pole position. Jack Hickey joins him on the podium in P2, with CJH rounding out the podium in P3. Phil Bardwell bottled it again in P4, with Court a good recovery in the end in P5. Paul McGuinness in 6th, a very strong race from him as well. You have to say up from 16th on the grid, picking up 10 places. Corey down in P7, he'll be disappointed with that one. Johners in P8, Aidan Griffin's P9, and Liam Robbo just about picking up the last point. And Dan didn't get fastest lap. Roy, that honour went to Softy.
Yeah, but Dan did give it a good go, to be fair. He was only a 10th off it, but yeah, at the end of the day, it was Softy who set the fastest lap, I think, in the middle of the race with the heavy fuel. So, yeah, Softy was just, in a league of his own.
Just toying with the rest of them, wasn't he?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, he knows he has the pace. He pushed on and then just cruised to the finish.
Yeah. What more do you need? Well, let's give you a quick rundown of the championship standings after that race. Softy extending his lead even further. 321 points for him. Jack Hickman now moves up into P2 in the championship. Just a mere 129 points off of Softy. Matt Tibos in P3 in the championship now on 184 points. And Dan the Man in P4 on 165. But where it really gets interesting is the battle for the Constructors' Championship. Racing Point 326, AlphaTauri 323. So just 3 points now separating the two teams there. And actually, it wouldn't be much different if it was just Softy's score that was taken for AlphaTauri's points, as has been his dominance, and perhaps Owen's inconsistencies, shall we say, only contributing 2 points to the team's total score. Roy, who's your driver of the night going to go to then?
I think CJH for his performance in Singapore was incredible. I think Liam Robbo would have been a contender had it not been for that mistake in Singapore. But CJH held it together and I think is deserving of driver of the day. Yeah,
I have to agree with you there. I think Paul is a good candidate as well, but didn't quite have the standout performance that CJH did. He had to keep his nose clean, and he did brilliantly. So a really solid performance there for the McLaren driver. So really well done to him. And we had another very entertaining evening of TGP1 action. Roy, thank you very much for joining me in the commentary box. Pleasure to have you up here. Hopefully have you again sometime soon. I hope you've all enjoyed this evening's stream. We've had two great races. Perhaps not for first place, but for everywhere else in the order. It was very, very competitive. This has been a TGP series production. I've been Mike Noon. He's been Roy. And we will see you next week where we head to a part of the world which I can't remember because I forgot to look at the calendar before I started this stream. So we look forward to seeing you next week at two clearly mysterious venues. And we can't wait until then. Thank you ever so much for joining us.